So you are listening to the film show on Hospital Radio Medway. It was International Women's Day on Friday, and as we didn't do a show on Friday, we thought today we would do our bit to celebrate that. And we've got friend of the show, Anna, back on. Welcome to the show.
Morning.
How are you doing?
I'm good. Less caffeinated than last time I spoke to you.
Yes, I can imagine, yeah. Have you recovered from the Oscars?
I have. It took a couple of days, but yeah, I'm fully recovered and back to normal sleeping patterns.
Wonderful. So we've got you on because we figured we should talk about some of the greatest female film characters of all time, and there's plenty to choose from. So we tasked you with delving into your DVD collection and giving us a few suggestions.
Yeah, and it's a topic that I obviously love talking about, strong female film characters.
So I guess what should we do? Top three? Like, give us a few, reel off a few of your favourites, and then let's focus on your top three.
Okay, so talking about a few of my favourites, and then I'll keep my top three till the end. So
Sure.
I think honourable mentions. So I would definitely go with Frances McDormand's Marge Gunderson in Fargo, the Bride in Kill Bill, played by Uma Thurman,
Yep.
Imperator Furiosa, Charlize Theron, Buffy Summers from the television show, and also portrayed in the film as well, which starred the recently departed Luke Perry.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of also Laurie Strode in Halloween H2O and Halloween 2018, Cher Horowitz from Clueless, Katniss Everdeen, Hermione Granger, and then Moana and Eowyn from Lord of the Rings. Probably they would be my top kind of honourable mentions.
I've got to say, Frances McDormand, pretty much everything she does is a strong female character.
Exactly. I mean, you are spoiled with riches when it comes to that lady. She is wonderful.
Yeah.
But I think Marge Gunderson being her first Oscar-winning role, and just being a character that, when you meet her, she's so comical. She's kind of a bit ridiculous when you kind of think, oh, this heavily pregnant policewoman is trying to solve a murder, and she doesn't come up with the most intelligent dialogue, and then she pretty much single-handedly solves the entire case. And it's just an incredible play on expectations, and I just think she's wonderful in the role, and she's also hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, McDormand she's a strong woman herself, so I don't think she can play anything but.
No.
So and actually, Beth and I were talking in the between songs about Disney characters. You mentioned Moana, and we were thinking characters like was it Elsa?
Elsa, yeah.
Yeah, and Merida as well from Brave.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's always when sounds silly. There's not a love. It's not a story about. It's not a love story, and there's not a prince as such. And I think that's why Elsa. It's such a beautiful story of Frozen, because the love story is between two sisters, and I think Disney are kind of going down that when they're not remaking into live action. They are going down that route of exploring that more. It's less about the falling in love with a prince in a day or an hour and then getting married. It's about the relationships within the family.
What do you think, though, about films like Beauty and the Beast? Because they've remade that just a couple of years ago. They didn't really update the character of Belle, though. She was still, her whole narrative was still about falling in love, and that it's not really on trend anymore, a female being all about just finding a husband and falling in love.
And I mean, Belle is my favourite. Well, possibly before Moana, she was my favourite Disney princess because she was quite independent. She didn't just want to marry the hunky, although stupid and evil, guy from the town, and she very much had her own mind. She read books, but at the same time, she does fall in love with Prince quite quickly, who is much, for me, he's much more lovely as the Beast, which is maybe a bit strange to say, but the update, I wasn't a huge fan of the update in terms of Belle herself, because you're right, it still does feel a little bit old-fashioned, and I think Emma Watson wasn't my choice, but I think that the fact that she had played Hermione Granger maybe gave her a bit more of an immediate feel of independence without too much explanation having to be done, because that's what people associate the character of Hermione with. She is very much the well, I know Harry, it's about Harry, but Hermione's the one with the most. She's probably the most sensible of the three. But yeah, I don't know. I would much rather that. I love Disney and I love some of the live action remakes, but I would much rather that they kind of focus their energy on films like Moana and original stories, and I find that more exciting than just kind of rehashing films that maybe had their place. Like Snow White is incredibly old-fashioned in terms of gender politics, but you know, it's a beautiful film and it has its place in history, and if you view it that way, then you can pull it to pieces, but there's no point. Whereas with something like Beauty and the Beast, it does feel a little bit off, maybe.
Yeah, I see what you mean. And I mean, Beth, what's your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Anna completely. I love the newer animated films like Frozen and Moana, where they are giving the female characters, you know, more to do. It's not just about them, you know, cleaning the house, singing to animals, finding a prince and getting married. But I do love the old ones as well, and I do like the remakes. I think that even though they're still very much this gender bias story, they're still nice, but I do wish that they would stop remaking things and just make more new stuff. But I've said that before. You know, it's getting a bit old.
And I mean, I love Giselle. I love Giselle and Enchanted for that reason. Because
Yeah.
it's deliberately mocking all of those tropes and the ridiculousness of the situation, and it does it in a really affectionate way. And it's a beautiful homage to all the vintage Disney films as well. And I think she is a very strong character by the end of that film. And yeah, I think she's my new favourite.
Funnily enough,
With Moana.
we're reviewing Isn't It Romantic later on in the show, and I think that does exactly the same thing, but for the rom-com.
Yeah.
You know, having a I guess a larger lady in a lead role as well in Rebel Wilson, it's very unconventional for rom-coms to do that.
Yeah.
And I think Netflix have actually delivered something really clever, kind of masquerading as a very typical genre film.
Yeah,
I think it's good.
exactly.
But anyway, I think we've gone off on a massive tangent. Who are your top three?
So my top three, do you want reasons as well as to why I love them so much?
Go for it.
So probably my number, it's difficult to choose between these two, but my number one is Ellen Ripley from Alien and Aliens and the Alien franchise, played by Sigourney Weaver. I am a huge fan of Sigourney Weaver anyway, in terms of everything that she does, but the fact that Ripley was originally written as a man, but they decided to change that and mix it up. When we first meet her in Alien, you know, she's not set up to be the lead female. It feels like it's going to be Dallas's film, Tom Skerritt's film, and you know, she's not the first build, but she is the strong female. She's the one who actually, when you rewatch, she doesn't want to let the infected crew member on board. She's very opinionated, and she's unafraid. But at the same time, she is very relatable. She's clearly frightened. She's not, you know, immune to harm, and you do easily identify with her. And I really enjoy the direct parallels between her and the Alien Queen, particularly when it comes to aliens, and they're both essentially defending their children or their child figure. And I just think she's wonderful.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we rewatched the Alien films not too long ago.
Yes, we watched all of them, didn't we?
We did, yeah. And actually, it's not my favourite franchise, but I do think that I love how they, considering at the time that the films were made, that they were tentpoled around such a. It was basically the Hunger Games of the 80s in how it used a strong female lead to sell the franchise.
Yeah.
And I really thought that her death was so heartbreaking and ceremonial in how they did it. It was horrible to watch. Spoiler for anyone that hasn't seen the Alien films, but there we are.
Oops.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
is she dead? I mean, you're never really fully killing Ripley. She's one of those people.
True.
Is she dead, or does she just come back to life all the time?
Yeah, of course, yeah. Cool, okay. Number two.
Number two, Sarah Connor, Linda Hamilton in The Terminator.
Strong choice.
Well, I'm going to say Terminator 1 and 2 because I'm going to pretend that the others don't exist. I don't think you can mention Ripley and not mention Sarah Connor, and I think the two of them go hand in hand. Maybe there's an element of James Cameron and his really strong heroines, and I love the fact that he does seem to champion strong female leads. But, you know, Sarah Connor, people often forget that in film one, she is, when people think of Sarah Connor, they think of her in Terminator 2, you know, kind of in a vest, muscles, and you know, trying to stop Judgment Day. But when we first meet her, she is very much the damsel. She comes across as an archetypal final girl that you expect from a horror film, but once she kind of loses her protector, she overcomes the odds and she defeats that evil. And the transition between that and in film 2, where she's mentally and physically prepared for Judgment Day or the prevention of it, and she completely embodies what we tend to associate with the male action hero, and kind of fills that Kyle Reese role from the first film when she's protecting her son. And she feels very much in the same league as Ripley does, and I think that it's a really interesting character development as well. And Linda Hamilton, the transition between those two roles, it is a more dramatic change than Ripley experiences between the first two films that she goes on, and she's just phenomenal.
Yeah, totally. I guess I'm not a massive fan of the Terminator films, but I can totally get on board with what you said. I think I would put Ripley above Sarah Connor, though.
Yeah, and I think I mean, when my top three are interchangeable, and I think when I say what my third one is, so my third person that I'm going to choose is Princess Leia, and I don't think that you can talk about strong female characters without mentioning the three of them, to be honest, and they are very much interchangeable in who I love the most. And I've got a T-shirt from Girls on Tops which has Carrie Fisher and Sigourney Weaver written on. So Princess Leia, I mean, obviously the dearly Miss Carrie Fisher, she is one of those characters that you grow up with as a little girl, and you know you can't watch Alien and Terminator when you're a child, although you might try. She is a character that you can watch and you can relate to, and she's very aspirational and aspires to be. And you know, essentially, yes, at the beginning of the franchise, she is being rescued, but she initiates that rescue. She kicks the whole story off with her message to R2-D2 and Kenobi, and with the exception of that initial release from the room that she's being held in, she's very much the orchestrator of her escape. I mean, her response to the men who are rescuing her is constantly chastising them or commenting on them not being very tall and just, you know, some kind of rescue. And then she turns out to be one of the greatest leaders of the Rebel Alliance. And then when we meet her again in The Force Awakens, she's founded the resistance against the First Order, and she's a general. And I just think that there's no point at which she is essentially needing a rescue apart from being taken out of a locked room. And even when she's being threatened by Darth Vader and they're saying that they're going to blow up her planet or whatever, she's not unmoved, but she kind of can see the bigger picture, and she is a campaigner, and I just think she's the person that little girls dream about being when they're older, even though it's, you know, not possible in the sense that you're never going to be in space. But she's just wonderful, and I'm interested to see how they say goodbye to her in episode 9, because I think I'm very excited about the film, but I do think that it's going to leave a big gap depending on how much footage they've already filmed.
I think it's a real shame because I agree. I'm a massive Star Wars fan, so you don't need to convince me about Princess Leia, but I think the biggest shame is that episode 9 was going to be her story. It was going to be her arc coming to a close, and it is a real tragedy that she wasn't around to film what was going to be probably her moment, and 6 films in the making as well.
Exactly, and I was really looking forward to her actually having a scene with Adam Driver, and then having that mother-son confrontation, which, however long it was going to be, I'm pretty sure they were saving that until the final film. And I just think it's as you say, it's a tragedy that we're not going to get to see that as an audience. Yeah,
it is a real shame. But I think that's a strong 3 that you've given us. Beth, have you got anything to add to that?
I think the only 2 that I would maybe add is, I know that you mentioned her, should I say, earlier, Anna, but Katniss Everdeen, I think she has to be in the top 5, because not only for her strong character, but what Jennifer Lawrence did for women in the industry anyway with Katniss. I mean, that's got to just be huge. The only other one I thought of maybe was Velma Kelly from Chicago.
Great shout.
Might be a bit controversial, but I mean, I know that she kills her husband, but was just, she starts off in competition with Roxy, and it's they end up like performing together and like do you know what I mean? Not very good at
it's a film that's entirely about them not needing men in their lives to succeed.
Exactly, yeah. And they come together at the end and do their own thing together rather than having a rivalry, and I think that's great.
Yeah.
But that's it for me, really.
Cool. Okay. I mean, we have gone on for a long time about this. I think that's show over. We're done. We're done. But it's been great to chat about that, and I think it's well worth shining a light on this, particularly around International Women's Day, and hopefully there'll be more big films with more female leads in the next few years as well that we can celebrate next year. But Anna, thank you very much for being on the show and talking to us.
Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome, and no doubt we will speak to you again soon.
Okay, thanks, guys. Have a good rest of the show.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye. So,
please hang up.
Oh, there we go. No hanging around there. Do you know what? I think that was a great chat, and I totally forgot about Chicago.
Yeah, I think, especially for when it was made, because it's not very modern, is it? Let's be honest. I mean, when was it made? Like,
it was like 2003.
Yeah, early 2000s.
But I mean, the musical though, the story was conceived like decades ago.
Exactly. Yeah, and I just think, especially to have oh my God, her name. What's her name?
The actress.
The actress. Yeah.
Renée Zellweger.
Renée Zellweger. Yeah. Not.
Or
no,
Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Yes.
She was pregnant when she filmed that.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
She was pregnant. And you watch her doing those dance moves and the choreography, and she's just the epitome of just an awesome, strong woman. Do you know what I mean? Like, she's quite heavily pregnant as well. Not a lot of people know that because they hide it so well.
Yeah.
And I just think for her to be doing that and to be playing such a powerful woman's role, I just think it's awesome, and I think it gets overlooked a lot. Not to mention it's one of my favourite films, but
Yeah.